God is asking something of me
Yeah.
right now. And I've been asking him for signs, like, where do you want me to go? It's like, here's the sign. These are all the signs leading up to this that I've been avoiding. And so finally I sat down at work and I was like, this is it.
I can't ignore it.
I can't ignore this anymore.
Yeah.
Clearly, Lord, you're calling me to this.
You mentioned your Scandinavian background.
Mm-hmm.
I looked up Edquist.
Yes.
So I saw Swedish. Is that primarily what?
Yeah, it's
okay.
Swedish background. So I had my whole dad's side of the family is all Lutheran. They're Swedish Lutheran. In fact, my great-grandfather was a Lutheran minister, so he was Pastor Edquist.
Really?
Sometimes people call me Pastor Edquist, and I have to say, no, that was a guy many years ago.
Yeah.
Not me. It makes me feel old.
So when did your parents or your family come to the States? Did you just, as long as you can remember?
Yeah, so my Swedish family, again, this great-grandfather who was a pastor had 10 kids, and someone, I think his father had come over from Sweden into Saskatchewan, Canada, and then they migrated down here into Northwest Indiana.
10 kids.
Mm-hmm.
He took that whole be fruitful and multiply thing literally.
Yeah, exactly.
God bless him. That's
While being a pastor too. So
how do you think he'd feel knowing that his great whatever great is a Catholic priest?
it might have been like a strange twist of irony in his opinion. That back in those days when Catholics and non-Catholics didn't talk.
Those were deep divides.
Yeah. So my grandmother, who actually was a very staunch Lutheran, she wasn't too happy by the fact that when I was in high school, I would get mailings from the vocation office. She lived down the street from us, but on the same street. And the vocation office would accidentally send to her vocation-related materials addressed to me. And so I'd go up to her as she'd stand out on the front steps and she'd be holding it in her hand. She said, "They want you to be a priest, don't they?" And she'd throw it out on the lawn at me.
Oh, wow.
So she was from the old days where Catholics and Lutherans didn't talk. But in a strange twist of irony, when we took her keys away when she turned 90 years old, the one who was learning to drive, myself, then had to start taking her to church.
Wow,
so I got to have a good taste of the Lutheran background by taking my grandma to church all the time.
Oh, you'd go worship with her.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a good grandson.
I still go to Catholic Mass.
I was baptized Lutheran, so
you were?
my family's Scandinavian, so I'm one of the only that are baptized in my family as far as my brothers.
We record in the evening, as you know, so it's been a long day. We usually have some sort of nightcap, and I'm like, what drink?
Oh, that kind of research. That's good research.
That's good research. What kind of drink would, see, I thought you were like Scottish or English and then Swedish. I'm like, what do the Swedes drink?
Yeah, you don't want to know what they drink.
What do they drink?
Mead.
There's this drink out there. It's this liqueur that is from Chicago.
Malort?
And it's called Malort.
Oh, no.
It's basically like motor oil.
Really?
Oh, it's like potpourri. Oh, it's the worst.
So you don't want that.
So good thing we didn't go that route?
Yeah, no. I think that
cognac was a good choice.
Yes.
Figured a good evening drink.
Amen.
I'm like,
Malort would not have been in my wheelhouse.
Yeah, I've only had Malort once, and that was enough for me to say I'm not doing
same.
You guys aren't really selling it for me, so
no, definitely.
no.
And so I don't know where. I mean, I bartended in Chicago. I don't know. It was like a recent thing. It's like a big Chicago thing. Like they're claiming it, but I don't know where it came from or how that started.
They're owning it.
It's like old style,
yeah.
like old style, and like Malort. I'm like, I don't know where Malort came from.
Yeah,
they could have claimed something a lot better.
So I'm sitting there Googling like Swedish things. The only thing I came up with was meatballs, lingonberry jam, and I think we have some IKEA stuff on set here.
Yes, exactly.
That's as close as we're probably getting tonight.
So when I was in the seminary, I would often try to use recipes because I had an old family cookbook that was from my Swedish family, and there were hundreds of recipes in this cookbook.
Oh, that's cool.
And some of them were Swedish meatballs. Some of them were what was it? Pickled herring, which actually can taste pretty good if you make it right with all the spices.
I hear it gets a bad rap when you think pickled and fish. Doesn't necessarily equate, but
it's just like salty. It's like kind of preserved.
Yeah. But my favorite thing when we're talking about alcoholic drinks, the thing that I liked to make was called glug. Okay, so in German,
sound
it's
you make when you drink
Glühwein,
it?
and so it's mulled wine.
That's good.
And so you
Never-
mix all these
Mulled wine,
spices
yeah.
together,
Yeah.
and it's like a concentrate, and you use cloves and
That's a Swedish thing?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
And then you can mix some port and some harder stuff together. And then if you really want to make it authentic, you mix in raisins and almonds too. And it's served hot.
Oh, wow.
So I've made that sometime.
So the next time you come on, I'll have Dima, my wife, make some glug.
Okay.
And then let's see if we can celebrate some Swedish heritage while we're here.
The closest I got to is just getting back from Disney at the Epcot at the they have like a Scandinavian spot. Where
Oh, yeah.
Like frozen stuff
Yeah.
like that. They had like a bakery, and then they had like a Viking coffee. That was the extent of me trying any kind of
So
Scandinavian.
the place that I go most of the time to get my Swedish ingredients is IKEA. So upstairs, you have all of the furniture and do-it-yourself stuff. But when you go downstairs, they have the cafe,
Okay.
which is their little Swedish grocery store. So when I need lingonberries, I go there.
Fresh lingonberries or frozen?
It's normally lingonberry jam.
Okay.
And so I like to make Swedish meatballs with lingonberry jam.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they're not the Swedish meatballs you buy from IKEA or in the store. Like that, those would taste gross.
Yeah.
But you make your own, which is like half ground pork, half ground beef with a bunch of other ingredients in there. And then you serve it with lingonberry jam. So that's what I enjoy making.
So when you having us over for dinner?
Sounds
Join
good.
me.
That sounds good.
I can guarantee you I won't make the thing that people do not look forward to. It's called lutefisk, which is fish soaked in lye. And so they would preserve it because in Sweden, where
Isn't lye poisonous?
Isn't that how they decompose
Kind of
bodies? That's like every scary movie.
I'm getting like
They
Breaking
pour
Bad
lye
on the
flashbacks.
body, and then it decomposes.
yeah,
Lye. Yeah. So
yeah,
what's up?
so it's soaked in lye. I can't tell you all of the properties behind it because I've never made it. In other words, nobody eats it. It's kind of like eating rubber, but it was a delicacy or just like something traditional a long time ago. Anyway, every year my Swedish family gets together on Christmas Eve for our annual Swedish smorgasbord.
Mhm.
And it's a whole Lutheran family with us Catholics joining them. And normally it's like 80 to 100 people at this party. They've been doing it for like 120 years.
Wow.
Wow.
Ever since this family came over from Sweden, we've been always having this party. So anyway, you'll see all kinds of different foods that have been passed down.
Mhm.
For some reason, last year, somebody decided to bring lutefisk. I don't think any of it got eaten, but they just wanted to make it for the heck of it, to say, we still want to bring back tradition, even
Yeah.
if it's something
Good for them.
else.
I just keep thinking about that episode from The Simpsons with the Protestant heaven and the Catholic heaven.
Oh, yeah, that one's awesome.
I don't know that one.
Oh, you have to watch.
I'll have to look it up.
The input clip here.
Yeah.
It's just funny. The Catholics are having fun.
Once Mike gets on Jamie's level, we'll start pulling up like, hey, Mike, pull it up. Pull up that episode.
Pull it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll already have it up. He's going to be as good as Jamie.
Yeah. Right.
That's for the Rogan fans out there.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your Swedish grandmother would get mail from the vocations office.
Mhm.
Now, how old were you when this started?
So I think I started when I was like 16. 'Cause
Discerning?
that was when I started discerning the priesthood. And I think I went on my first visit to a seminary when I was around that age, probably like sophomore, junior in high school.
Were you in public high school, Catholic high school?
Public high school. So I was in Catholic grade school, preschool through 8th grade, and then I went to public high school for 4 years.
Oh,
So what drew that from public high school to discernment?
Discerning.
What does that process look like for Father Nate?
Sure. Well, for me, there was always that Catholic background, strong background. I always knew what I had to do. I mean, for me, I always have like this strong sense of loyalty, even if I feel that I'm not like wanting to do something, I feel like I should. And, but I always felt, even with that strong sense of loyalty, like
sorry, loyalty to what?
so loyalty to anything that I'm like a part of or that is part of like the background.
So you're Catholic, loyalty to being Catholic.
Right.
And then did you feel called to discernment? Like, what was that like that
Mhm.
prompted you to explore this path?
Yeah. So I was always strongly connected to my faith. So when I was in high school and outside of the Catholic school, matrix, I guess. There wasn't a whole lot out there. And so I wanted to be a little more intentional about staying involved with my faith. So there was this youth group that was very strongly connected to like the Eucharist, prayer, just training you to be formed as a disciple of Christ. And so I got involved with it and started to be invited to things with other young men.
Is this
who were
at your
also
local
discerning.
parish?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this was St. Joseph Parish in LaPorte many years ago. Actually, some of us who came out of that youth group, 3 of us are priests.
Wow.
And there were a bunch of married couples that came from that youth group.
Who are the other priests?
Father Chris Stanish was one of them, and Father Greg Bermerle.
Wow. Okay.
So we all were in the same youth group.
That's
Nice.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that just shows a testament of how, as I'm a parent, he's a parent of how to pass our faith on to our children, because something as a good small group where it's not just playing frisbee or having fun, which is cool, and we want to be able to do those things, but where the formation goes on and loving people and having somebody to guide other people through, like, why? Like, why is this important? Not just because mom and dad dropped me off here, but something to, someone who lives it, number one, helping like lead it. I'm sure there was a strong leader, somebody who took their faith serious, and that's attractive. It's like, we always say between my wife, it's like more is caught than taught. Like, you can teach the catechism all you want, but if I'm not living it, I'm not going to mass, I'm not leading prayer, I'm not doing the things that I'm supposed to do, my kids aren't going to take it as serious. So it's even, and especially this day and age,
Right.
There's so many voices that are pulling people in these small groups. So that's one of the best things. I've heard those kinds of stories all the time. It's like, hey, I know we had the bishop on our podcast, and he talked about the same thing. It's like getting in a small group, because it could be isolated. If you're by yourself trying to figure this out, and you have these feelings, and you're just hanging out with your public school, friends, you're going to be pulled different directions. But when you're in a band of brothers or a small group, especially people your age, and it's normal, and you're still having fun, and but you're growing in your faith, it just helps so much. I've heard a lot of those stories. And look, 3 priests from one small group. That's a testament to how important community is in our faith. Is not trying to necessarily always discern by yourself, which I guess that's part of the process too, but having other people to share with. So how much do you think discernment within a group like that helps, or how much was it when you started? Was it just you and like a vocations director, or is this something you guys would regularly talk about within like your youth group?
Yeah, so in my situation, I guess vocation in general was pretty frequently talked about. So in this particular youth group, I was like the first public school kid. The rest of the kids were either all homeschool, and there was a huge community.
They're like, we got one.
Or they were going to Catholic high schools in the area. I felt like I was the first public school kid. So these are people I did not know.
Okay.
But they were kind of in their own little community. They all came from very strong, intentional Catholic families. And so naturally there was a sense of like, okay, mission, you grasp onto what your mission is in life at a young age.
Yeah.
And the faith is always a strong part of that. So because of that, I was kind of pulled into this arena. And because I was super interested, like intellectually in the faith, I wouldn't say that like my heart was super formed toward it, but like I was really interested in like the faith making sense and being logical.
Were you drawn? So 16-year-old at the time, Nate,
Yeah.
what drew you? What was kind of working in your heart? Was it, I want to explore my faith more? I want to explore this group that I'm a part of and that I want to be faithful to? Was it explicitly, I want to check out what this priesthood thing, like, what was the kickoff point for you?
Yeah, so priesthood didn't really come until I was probably about 16 or 17 years old.
Okay.
Before that, it was more so an intellectual type of venture. Like it just made sense. When I was younger, I always wanted to go into medicine, have some type of background in just like life ethics, biology, different things like that. So I was really interested in like bioethics, just faith and reason, the science of behind what we believe, and how that doesn't conflict with reason. And because of that, I just wanted to learn more and more. And so in this youth group, it was led by a priest. There was a deacon there too, a few mothers. There's actually a doctor, 2 doctors who were in this youth group, and they would frequently give us talks on like, why does the church teach what it teaches on contraception? or
Wow.
what about like euthanasia or like
You
stem
guys are
cell
getting some heavy
research?
topics here.
Yeah, so these were like
Yeah.
heavy things that for me, I was like, well, this is super interesting because I
Yeah.
like science and they're actually talking about
And
this.
who doesn't like to
I
be
didn't grow
around
up with
like the
this.
adults at the table? It's like you're sitting at a table with doctors and other people. Like like when I was a little kid, I always want to sit around the adult table
Yeah.
because they're talking about the cool stuff. So that's
Yeah.
and not dumbing down the faith and watering down. That's what we think a lot of times attracts to people. But it's like, no, it's raising those standards and talking about our faith is so rich with Aquinas or whatever, these kinds of things. I know Bishop Barron, that's his story. Is like, as soon as he learned about Aquinas, it's like open up the, the minds, that's at least the entry point into it. So then the natural progression is, so now you're getting in here, where did it get down to the heart more?
Yeah, I think because of that, that was kind of my entry point into this, more like an intellectual stimulation, so to speak. But we got more introduced to prayer, and we had Eucharistic adoration pretty much every time, and like praise and worship music. So it came from the head down to the heart a little bit more, the more that I was challenged, like, you spend time with everybody else in adoration, now you should go to adoration during the week all by yourself and spend some quiet time with the Lord. And in the midst of like crazy days, that's when I would go to the church and just like stop by for a few minutes and be like, this is where I'm at peace because I know that the Lord's here. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I know I'm supposed to be here.
I'm here.
And whether I'm supposed to just spout out words or say what I think God wants to hear, but I just want to be here because this is where the Lord is. So little by little, my heart started to get molded a little bit more. And whereas it was more of an individual thing for my own benefit, I started to get to know these other young men who were also striving for virtue, who were not like the rest of my Catholic friends, who were not really striving for virtue very much.
Yeah.
So it's like having these different groups of friends, and you know that even though you want to hang out with this group of guys, at the same time, your heart's more drawn to those who are like, we want to push ourselves to be the best Catholic men that we can be. That's where my heart was drawn more. So it went from being like individualized as a Catholic more to like, you're stronger when you're in a group setting with other faithful Catholic men.
What's great in your story, it clearly highlights when you draw closer to God, you do the things of God and he starts to shape you. And as he shapes you, desire begins to tune to his will. And the things we desire are those that align our will to his without even knowing it. Right? We begin to do the things of God, and then we start seeking the voice of God. And ultimately, we want to do the will of God. And you're doing this, you're about 16, which is like, for me, I see 16-year-olds, I'm like,
I know what I was doing. It wasn't
yeah, well, I wasn't doing that at 16. What led you then to take discernment more seriously or priestly discernment more seriously?
Yeah, I think going back to that sense of loyalty, I'd always just been brought up with that sense. I was one of 7 children, and like my father always instilled in me, like, you start something, you stay committed to it.
Yep.
When my grandmother, who I was talking about, could no longer drive, and I was the one who got her car, and right at the time I was getting my permit was the time that we took her keys away. And so guess who was the lucky one who then got to
Nate, you get the car, but then you have to drive grandma around.
So you're driving her to her appointments, to the store to get groceries, and you're taking her to church.
Yeah.
So because of that, I think I was drawn to more of like that sense of loyalty, like this is just what you do.
Yeah.
Like if you have an aging grandmother. She lived 3 houses down from me. So I would just end up visiting her a couple hours a day, watch Jeopardy with Wheel of Fortune and just play cards and stuff. That sense of loyalty that I was drawn to that, like I need to take care of somebody who is in need and that I owe a debt of gratitude to for being a part of the reason why I'm here in the first place. It helped me to kind of ask the question, what's most important in life right now? Even though I may have had like influences that were pulling me one direction, of course, with like friends and wanting to do fun stuff. I had that sense of like loyalty that I had to be drawn in this direction too, and to discern where I felt that God was leading me. So the faith was always very strong throughout this whole process, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So where was God leading you? What's that look like?
Yeah. So in high school, I think I did a couple of visits to the seminary. just going
What
with a group
seminary
of
were you
guys.
at?
So Immaculate Heart of Mary Seminary
Okay.
in Winona,
So
Minnesota.
how does that work? You just call them up and say, "Hey, I want to come visit."
Yeah,
that
no.
gets worked out through like some kind of director, or like
Yeah, so the vocation director would take, I think, annual visits
Okay.
to the seminary to bring big groups of young guys with. So it wasn't like you were
you
me,
just gotta
Nate,
saw you
I'm
gotta
the only
go,
one who goes
Hey,
up
can I
there.
come check this out? I'm interested.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they would have like come and see weekends. So I would just kind of be like, okay, I'll just tag along
Yeah.
these group of guys. If nothing
And
else,
it makes
I
it
got
a
to
lot
spend time
easier
with
when
them.
you're with a group of people. It doesn't be, I know if you went by
Right.
yourself, it'd be very intimidating.
Yeah.
For sure. That's cool.
One thing too that stuck out for me is Pope Benedict came to the United States. This was back in 2008. So I was a junior in high
Yeah.
school. I think I was 17 years old. And through some type of lottery, our youth group ended up securing like 5 tickets to go to a youth rally that he was having.
Mhm.
So it was, so the
Guys hit the
priest-
Catholic jackpot.
Yeah, exactly.
Youth rally with the Pope.
Mhm.
All right, let's go.
Yeah, so there were, I was asked if I wanted to go along with. Father Greg Bimura was the other guy who was asked, and there were 2 ladies who were also asked to go with as well. So we went up there, stayed a couple days up in New York, and went to this youth rally, and it was like 8 or 9 hours in the afternoon under hot sun. Kelly Clarkson was singing "Since You've Been Gone," and all these bands are playing. And then
She Catholic?
I don't think so. Then the
Okay.
Pope shows up. And so it's this big rally with all this music, and he gives an address. And I just remember it having like a big impact
Yeah.
on me.
Oh, I bet.
Like, I feel like he's speaking directly to me.
Yeah.
He said, young people don't satisfy for what's not God.
Uh-huh.
And there's a yearning in your heart. And the only thing that will satisfy that is Christ himself. And so I kind of took that and I thought, well, you know, I still have different things pulling me in different directions in
Yeah.
my own heart. But I felt that that was a big kind of turning point in my own discernment.
Gave some clarity.
It gave some challenge.
Mm.
I don't know if it was clarity, but it gave some challenge, even though in the next couple of years I would kind of be avoiding that challenge a little bit.
Yeah.
It gave a challenge to my heart.
So you go from high school to college.
Mm-hmm.
When does seminary become a thing?
Okay. So I went off to Indiana University to study biology,
Yeah.
you know, as a freshman. And during that time, speaking of non-Catholics, I ended up joining a Cru Bible study. So it was used to be called Campus Crusade for Christ, and it was renamed Cru, which is like evangelical
Mhm.
background.
Sounds cooler.
The shallow entry point was
Yeah, they do branding a lot better.
Like J.
They
Crew,
do.
like coming to J. It's like,
Yeah,
like
who's not gonna join Crew?
Who's not going to join Crew?
Yeah.
so their entry point was
It's
Wednesday
not like
night.
OCIA.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Talk about a way of rebranding.
Yeah.
So they had Wednesday night Ultimate Frisbee. There would be like 500 or 600 people coming out to Wednesday night Ultimate Frisbee.
Oh,
So this
wow.
was their shallow entry point to get you in.
Wow.
Then they would invite you to like their rock concert, and then they would invite you to their dorm Bible studies. So I joined the dorm Bible study. It was in my dorm.
So like what was the 500 people at this kickoff thing?
Mhm.
Rock concert probably was well attended. How many actually go to the Bible study?
So in my Bible study, it was actually most of the guys like on my, I don't want to say most of the guys in my dorm, but there were a good 20 guys in my dorm who
Yeah, for college, that's good.
Bible study.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, I was the only Catholic.
Okay.
So everyone else was Protestant. Everybody knows their Bible super
You just
well.
hide in the corner
and I'm
with your
sitting
NAB,
there
like-
with my Bible that's
Like this, trying to dodge
Yeah.
everyone, trying to convert, like what become, try to
Yeah.
try to convert you the whole
so-
time.
Yeah.
everybody's got Bibles that are all covered in highlighters and like pen markings everywhere. I have like the cleanest Bible there is because as Catholics, we don't touch it.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there, and then somehow I guess I revealed that I was
Funny.
Catholic early on. Well, that was a bad idea because then they would start asking for like perspective. So what's
Sure.
the Catholic perspective on this? And of course, you know, I knew what was in the Bible, but it didn't mean I could find it, what I was looking for, or be able
Chapter,
to
verse.
explain it and
Yeah.
articulate it as well as I should have. So again, here's another challenge. I'm forced to explore the Word of God and dive into a little bit more so that I actually know what the
Yeah.
Word of God is saying
Mm-hmm.
and actually start praying with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I start getting challenged. And again, it's a group of men on a college campus who, with all kinds of things that are pulling you in all different directions, basically the opposite of striving for virtue
Mm-hmm.
is what you find on the college campus. So what this was meant to do is to help us hold each other accountable, lift each other up,
Yeah.
and just, live a Christ-like life the
Mhm.
best you could. And so I got to see this, like, look at my Catholic friends who definitely are not living a life of virtue, and look at all these Protestant guys that I'm spending time with
Who
are striving to live virtuous lives.
Mhm.
So I have to tell you the thing that stuck out for me. Towards the end of the year at this crew Bible study, we had a group obstacle course that we had to do, and it lasted a few hours. So what we did is there's this creek that runs through town. It's called the Jordan River on the campus of Indiana.
That's what it's really called?
Yeah.
That's
So it's only like 10 feet wide, 15 feet wide.
Not that much
Couple
different than
feet
the real
deep.
Jordan River.
Yeah, no. So what we did is it's basically a Brotherhood exercise. We had to cross from one end of campus, going through the river, traverse through it, try to get to the other end of campus. It took us a couple hours because what happened was you got confronted with certain questions that you had to truthfully answer. And depending on how you answered, you had some type of handicap that was put on you. And it was your job as brothers to get each other through it.
Mm.
So we had to traverse through this river. Even at one point, we couldn't go through the river because it ended with a bridge. You had to climb over the bridge onto the street where there are cars going by and get each other across this bridge.
None of this
Back
sanctioned
home.
by the university.
Probably not, no, but you just did it. Anybody just went out and did what they
I
wanted
was
to.
going to stop you from jumping in the river.
So the first thing that you had to do was the leaders of the Bible study. Basically, you had to go up to them one by one, and they would ask you these questions. I hope it's okay what we're about to say, but like, have you looked at pornography in the last month or so? If you answered yes, you got a blindfold put over your eyes.
Wow.
So guess how many guys didn't have blindfolds over their eyes? Not many, right? So it was your job now to lead everybody else through like the next few hundred feet.
Does the blindfold ever come off?
At some point it does.
Okay.
Yeah, at some point it does.
Okay.
So then, like, let's say the next thing that they would ask you is, have you spoken badly about anybody or like said something negative behind someone's back? And if that happened, you got duct tape over your mouth, so you couldn't speak.
Yeah.
Okay. Next thing is, have you like taken anything that wasn't yours? Have you cheated on a test or something, or just something like that? And then you would have like duct tape or a piece of tape put on your arm. You can't use your arm. Next question was something else. You put a piece of tape over your leg. You can't use your leg. So you're carrying your fellow guys through this river. It was probably one of the hardest workouts ever.
Wow.
Sounds
but-
like
Sounds like something SEALs do.
sounds like hazing. Like
Yeah.
you're
Well,
I was
Pratt
gonna
hazing.
say,
It's Christian hazing.
I was going to say, because I have a similar story, but it was through the fraternity.
Yeah.
They just blindfolded us and dropped us off like 20 miles away, and we had no idea where we were at. We had to figure out how to get back.
Yeah.
That almost
But it
sounds
was
like that almost sounds like a military training
Yeah.
story.
Like bugs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
the whole
what'd you walk away from that exercise?
well, they explained to us this was a fraternal exercise. Like you have to be able to.
So you guys are
lift each
right,
other
it
up
was
in
hazing.
Christ.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, what we would always say is that no, you learn how you become vulnerable, obviously, literally become vulnerable. People help you. And for us, it was you get to know people when you're walking for 5-6 hours and trying to solve a problem, how to get
bonding thing.
Yeah, it's a bonding thing, especially, that's why they do stuff like that in the SEALs or whatever, because those experiences help forge real relationships. And it's weird because that's how we've done it for millennia of men getting together to go out on a hunting party or whatever would be. That's how they would do it. Like, hey,
You have to learn to depend upon
Yeah.
other people too. So that's the whole vulnerability aspect.
Yeah.
The thing that would be different with the Catholics, though, is I told the priest about this. He's like, "Oh, we would never have public confessions if we did that.
Yeah,
You wouldn't be
right.
telling everybody else."
Yeah, that I didn't watch porn the last month, or I
Yeah,
did.
exactly.
So how did that play into your vocation story?
So biblical literacy
Ah,
was a big part of that,
Yeah.
and just getting me to read the Bible a little bit more.
okay.
So what I had been doing up through that point has been getting more familiar with just Eucharistic adoration, having my own like prayer books, saying the right prayers.
Did they have like a Newman Center or something, or is it just a local Catholic church?
They did have, they had two actually. They had a Newman Center parish and then another parish. So I started going to Mass a little bit more. Maybe a
So you
couple
weren't
times a week.
isolated. So you still had
Right, I still had
You still had Catholics there. You still had the Mass. You still had the sacraments and all those things. Okay.
Mhm.
Right, but I would say the biggest influence was probably the Protestants
Wow. Yeah.
more than the Catholics. But I would go to Mass on a somewhat regular basis, and even started going to like early morning Mass. When I say early, I mean it's like 7 a.m.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, my
Or college kid, yeah.
roommate is like still passed out for a couple more hours
hmm
in the dorm room. But it just kind of got me more into a habit of just like taking ownership over my own life, not waking up like late sleeping in all the time.
Yeah.
Kind of started training me a little
Building
bit more
in
for
some
seminary
discipline.
life. Yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit more discipline. So how my vocation ended up playing into this is I was at home on break. And so I'm like a year and a half into my time at IU.
So you're a sophomore at this point.
Mhm.
hmm
So I'm at home on break, and I end up going to this parish that is not in my hometown. So it was outside my hometown. I'd never been in this parish before. I go to daily Mass, which is in this small daily chapel, and everyone else at Mass is at least like 30 or 40. No, I was 19. So everyone was at least like 40 or 50 years older than me at daily Mass. So if you see a young guy coming to daily Mass,
Yeah.
especially at this church, everyone's like, what's he doing here?
hmm
Okay, because I was going off to work after this. So a woman taps me on the shoulder after Mass, and she invites me out in the hallway, and she says, hey, my name's so-and-so. We help support vocations here. I just want to ask you the question, have you ever thought about vocation of the priesthood? And I said, well, I have. I kind of beat around the bush a little bit. I said, I've thought about it, but right now I'm studying biology, and I'm thinking about becoming a doctor.
hmm
And so she said, okay, well, we'll continue to pray for you. If there's anything you need, please feel free to reach out. Okay, so I go off to work. The next week I come back and come to the same Mass in the morning, and I'm sitting there kneeling after Mass, and I get another tap on my shoulder, and I look back, it's her again. And I think, oh, crud.
It's the vocation lady.
She pulls me out into the hallway, and she just point blank asks me these two questions. She says, what kind of thoughts do you get when you think about the priesthood? And I say, peaceful thoughts, very joyful thoughts. I think priests live a very peaceful life.
hmm
And so she said this was her next question. So what's it going to be? Dr. Edquist or Father Edquist? I had never been so caught off guard by a question in my life.
Wow.
And I was just frozen, and I was just like boiling a little bit. And so I think I said, like, lady, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I took off,
Yeah.
and I agonized that whole day.
So it was almost like
at work.
fight or flight. And you
Exactly.
Just,
Because up until this moment, I had been reading more just like discernment materials.
yeah.
Certain priests had reached out to me. I was kind of involved with different youth ministry things.
You're a
I
young
was
single
pondering
guy
over the
that's going to daily Mass.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course they are.
So this woman saw something
hmm
in me that I was obviously kind of avoiding the question a little bit.
hmm
And she point blank asked me it.
And how much is,
Confronted.
Good for
is
her.
God using her to get to you?
Mhm.
You know, somebody who's bold and not weird. Because that's, those are kind of weird questions to ask somebody
Yeah.
that you don't know.
Yeah.
But God sometimes uses people in those kind of situations to just tug at us or ask
Yeah.
those questions. So how much, so you said you were discerning somewhat.
Mhm.
For those who are watching or listening, we hear that word all the time, discern.
Right.
What kind of definition would you throw out, just general? Is it, is it just thinking about it? It's praying about it? What does that look like if somebody, they're discerning whatever, if that's for religious life or for married life or whatever? What is discernment? How could we define it and better understand it?
Mhm. Okay. I would say that to discern means to intentionally discover where you're being led. Right? So with intention, you're asking God to give you light to a certain situation.
Mhm.
And it could be your vocation in life, big decisions. It could be the smallest decisions. Like, where is God inviting me into this like little decision about what I'm going to do with my coworkers today, like on this certain project? Discerning through any decision is like an intentional decision to invite God into it.
So it's not just deliberation. I'm weighing pros and cons. I've got a list of,
Right. Anyone can deliberate.
and yeah.
Right. So discerning in the religious sense or in the vocational sense, you might say, is intentionally inviting the Lord into it to shed light on your situation, so that now it's not just your decision, but you're making an informed decision based on where you feel the will of God is leading you.
Yeah.
How much do you pen to paper on a lot of this too, to kind of keep track of like how God's maybe talking to you, or through prayer, or through the scriptures, or stuff like that? Or is this all just mental, or what was the process for you look like?
Yeah, so off and on over the years, I've done some journaling, especially when I was in seminary. Did a lot of just journaling about what kind of movements in prayer God is making within my heart. Like, what's God saying to me right now?
Yeah.
Write it down. And then when I go back to it later, I can say, oh, wow, what was I thinking then?
They're fleeting.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
these things come, like, at least for me, they rapid come
Sure.
all the time when I'm praying or thinking about it. So I started journaling at Mass. I bring a Mass journal, and I read the readings, and then like they hit me like lightning bolts, but then they go away.
Like
then
dreams.
Then you forget about them, and then you go back like, oh, that thing. Yeah, okay.
See,
Especially for
what
bigger
priests-
decisions.
That's what priests do right now when we have to figure out what we're preaching on.
I've
So
been
when
watching-
something
I've been
comes to me,
watching
I'm
your-
like, where's a sheet of
I
paper?
know, I've been
need to,
watching yours. There's some good ones.
Oh,
I've
thank
been
you.
watching the reels. Yeah. So you can use your phone if it comes in there, put in your notes or something like that. So what's the quote that I hear? I don't know who is attributed to. Is like, since discernment became popular, no one's made a decision. Have you heard that? It's like ever since that became like the thing. Well, I'm discerning. I'm still discerning, or like how you were kind of avoiding this conversation. Like, no, I'm thinking about it. But when it comes time to make a decision, I think the word decision comes from something in the Latin to cut off. Like you make this, and nothing else is possible. Just like I'm married, my wife only. There's no other possibility of any other women. But how much, like I said, is that it became like in vogue, like I'm discerning, whether they were really truly like asking God to let me know your will and guide me. But, I'm thinking about it, just another way to put it off, or not kind of confront maybe what God is putting on our hearts. And sometimes, so how much, I just thought that, I don't know. I tried tracking it down because I heard it a long time ago, and I was thinking about it when we were talking about the vocations, that discernment, ever since it became popular, no one has made a decision.
Yeah.
I know for me, because I've had different career things and opportunities, and then, it doesn't feel like I'm being called to that, because it's, I've also heard that when God calls us, it's especially out of something that we're already in, it's pretty clear that it's not like, well, I think so. No, this is like, I know, or I feel like God's really calling me.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, the lady taps you, and now it's like almost like the pressure's on, or like the spotlight. Now people are like pressuring you almost a little bit, and maybe that's God using her some way, roundabout way.
Yeah, I think God used her. So to bring all of that full circle, so the woman who tapped me on the shoulder and confronted me and was the one who kind of forced me to make the decision, she is now my secretary in the vocation office.
Wow.
Yeah, so everything kind of just came
Providence
full
then.
circle.
Wait, who's that?
Providence.
Joanne Rosenau.
Wow.
So this was over, 13 years ago that happened. And I didn't tell anybody. She knew, of course, she knew this whole time.
Yeah.
I didn't tell anyone that it was her until like a few months ago. I was giving a talk at like a diocesan event, and I shared this story, and I said, do you know who it was? And I said, she's standing right over there. And so
That's
everyone was
crazy.
kind of caught off guard by
How
that.
cool is
but-
that? Yeah.
But no, it's
So did she say like she was praying about it and prompted? She wasn't just trying to like, hey, you should be a priest, you should be a priest, you should be a priest. But it was just like she saw something in you, or God spoke to her to maybe, hey,
yeah,
to touch
she was involved in the vocation ministry at this particular parish.
Okay.
And so because of that, she had that special eyesight, so to speak, to know or to be able to discern who in the parish might be considering some type of call, and then just encouraging them. And,
You said, Father, at one point that there's different things pulling at you.
mhm.
They're still pulling at you as you're going through this process. How do you know which thing to go after?
Yeah. So I had been considering different options of where to go, vocations in life, so
Yeah.
to speak. So we can get to that in a little bit. But I wanted to get married, have a family,
Mm-hmm.
become a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
make tons of money.
Mhm.
Like none of those things actually came true. But they're all good things, right? So at the same
Wait, you mean you don't
time-
make tons of money?
Right. I make tons of money that goes to the church. So all these are great things, and I was kind of weighing a little bit. And the priesthood was always kind of in the background, but I didn't want to confront that God might be calling me to that, because I thought that even though it seemed like it was peaceful, it also seemed like there could be loneliness.
Yeah.
And it seemed like there could be a lot of work.
Mhm.
That
You mean you guys
You mean-
work just Sundays? So
Well,
you
I
were,
mean,
so you knew this.
there's a lot of blue on my Google Calendar, if
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but so you had an idea of what went into, because you spent so many times around different other Catholics and around parishes and priests. So you had good relationships with your parish priest and stuff like that. That's a big deal too.
Yeah, there were-
you had priests that you looked up to. Also.
yeah, there were lots of priests who like had an influence on me
Mhm.
throughout my time in high school and in the seminary. I mean, I even had one priest. He was my home pastor, who was not a priest who was really. He didn't have a lot of things going on in the parish.
Yeah.
I get that. But when I was down in Bloomington, which is where he went to school decades before, he actually came down to visit me a few times while I was down there. And I hadn't even said I'm going to seminary. or
Oh,
anything.
cool.
He's just like, I'm coming down to visit. I'm going to stay at, a hotel, want to go out for dinner.
Yeah.
And he would take me through campus and say, when I was here 30 years ago, we did that over there and that over there.
So now that you're on the other side of things, he was sitting like with his staff or with his team, whatever,
Mhm.
thinking, I think Nate's got a vocation. I'm going to keep that relationship going.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
So he saw something in you that you maybe
Hmm.
didn't want to see in yourself.
Yeah.
So many young people today, myself included as a young person, of course, just don't mind the grays. So many young people, though, that they don't know how to make a decision and they feel lost.
Hmm.
I mean, you talk to a lot of them, they don't know how to pick a major. They don't want to commit to any one thing. They might be jumping from job to job. So you felt a lot of things calling at you.
Hmm.
To ask you that question again, like, how did you say, this is the path that I'm going to commit myself to amidst all of these other paths that are available to me?
Right. So I think it came down to that day when I was confronted by this lady, and
Yeah.
I had never agonized over a decision so much in my life.
Mhm.
And it was all in like this span of days. So after this happened, I go to work and I'm just thinking about this the whole time. I'm sitting there weed whacking and I'm like I'm just getting super like agonized inside because I'm like, God is asking something of me
Yeah.
right now. And I've been asking him for signs, like, where do you want me to go? It's like, here's the sign. These are all the signs leading up to this that I've been avoiding. And so finally I sat down at work and I was like, this is it.
I can't ignore it.
I can't
anymore.
ignore this anymore.
Yeah.
Clearly, Lord, you're calling me to this.
That's so common, and especially priestly vocations, maybe because priests, they really reflect on their life and the decisions that go into it. A lot of them ignore for so long.
Right.
Like, no, that can't be it. Nope, God, all right, I'm good. Nope, these other things. And good things like doctor, family, that's good things. But they put it off for so long, the pressure just builds and builds and builds. And so you're in this moment and it's building. I can't ignore it anymore. Where do you go from there?
So immediately I pick up my phone. This was before I had a smartphone, so I think I had a flip phone, and I looked in the phone book. The parish where the vocation director, immediately before he was the vocation director, and I called him up and I said, Father, we need to talk. And he said, so you finally made the decision.
Oh,
And I remember saying, it's not that simple,
yeah.
but I want to talk to you. So I ended up going and visiting with him, and he kind of walked me through this whole process and
Yeah.
said, Nate, you're open to it. You just need to respond, with docility. Open your heart. Just surrender to the Lord and ask where he wants to take you right now.
Hmm.
So I became a
was
little
good.
bit more at peace.
And he was good. And so now that's what you do. So
Mhm.
how much of that moment, it's like all these moments keep stacking on top of each other. It's like
Right.
the lady who now she's at the vocations, now you're doing vocations because obviously you had a good interaction with somebody who listened, or, when we're making those decisions, when you got multiple things pulling on you, and it's like somebody that you can trust or you can take their opinion,
Right.
those are important because a lot of people don't have somebody that they can count on or try, to go to with big type stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's nice that you had that.
Right. So I share with you my response to this vocation director and actually coming back and saying I'm ready for this. But
Yeah.
leading up to this for a couple of years, he would often reach out to me, send me mailings and messages and things.
To your grandma's house.
Well, to my grandma's house, but also to mine. But he, very valiant effort. And oftentimes what I would do is just not respond.
Yeah.
As the kids call it, ghosting.
Ghosting. Yeah, exactly. So now that
You ghosted the church.
I ghosted the vocation director, so that now that I'm vocation director and I get to do the
You get
recruiting,
ghosted.
You get ghosted.
I get ghosted too. So it's a taste of my own medicine.
So you understand. So
Yeah.
well,
Be careful what you do because it might come back.
Can I ask, because it's such a, I was in seminary as well.
that's what I was going to shift it all the way. So now we're talking. So how did that look like for somebody to go and then to move back?
Yeah.
That's what I was always interested.
Well, you obviously chose a higher state in life because religious vocation is a higher state. But what I'd like to know from your experience and as you're continuing to live it, what was a point of discernment for me, like the central point that I just kept going back to, is celibacy. Not so much chastity, but celibacy.
Right.
Well, define the difference. So some people may not know the difference.
Yeah, I could do that. But in your experience and how you're living it, how would you define chastity versus celibacy?
Okay. So chastity would be something that all of us are called to.
Yeah.
So being chaste means that we're able to have a healthy regulation, integration
Mhm.
of our sexuality, so that we're using it as a channel to give glory to God rather than as a channel to give glory to ourselves or self-pleasure, whatever. So you're using your sexuality channeled in a healthy way, not repressing it, but chastity would be something that everyone is
Even in
called to.
married life.
Even in married
A lot
life.
of people don't understand that too. Yeah.
And we're living with the dignity with which we're created,
Mhm.
right? In the image and likeness of God, we live with that dignity.
Right.
And if you are married, you're respecting the dignity that your wife herself
be
has.
Unitive and procreative is but yeah, I mean, we do NFP, so it's like my wife and I, we're on the same page, but I know a lot of it's a tough conversation. It's like, well, once I get married, all those rules go away. You know, that's what I was hoping for. But
Right.
you know, as I got deeper into my faith and started studying, like, oh no.
How did you as a young man though, like celibacy, one of your things was I want to get married and have a wife and family.
Yeah, exactly. So I grew up in a family of 7 children.
Yeah, wow.
So I know what it was like to grow up in a larger family. And even though I wanted to get out of that house so often because of all the fighting and like my brothers and sisters and stuff, you know, the more kids you have
Oh,
in
yeah.
your house, the more
It's like WrestleMania.
more of this that's going to happen.
Sure.
And we actually would watch WrestleMania and Monday Night Raw and do. I had 4 older brothers, and so we did wrestling moves, and I was always on the receiving end of it. So I would just get manhandled and put into sleeper holds all the time.
That's what
So because of that,
we did the same. Yeah.
I got a good taste of the family life, but at the same time, I had an interest in having my own family. I mean,
Yeah.
who does not want connection and relationship? So what I saw in the priesthood was a peaceful lifestyle, something that I aspired to, like virtue, being able to preach in front of people, just like striving to live the holiest life I could. But a stumbling block to that was what I perceived as a lonely lifestyle,
Yeah.
right?
But I like your vocation video that you guys actually just put up. Kind of brings us to that. Is that how awesome it is, how intentional the diocese is for you and all the other brother priests to get together to have like an actual fraternal brotherhood where it's not, you know, that's what my complaint when I became Catholic. When I first became Catholic, because I'm a convert, I was on fire. I'm like, everyone's doing their own thing. Like this, I had 3 parishes in one town. I was trying to get these different parishes to just try to work together. No one wanted to deal with anybody and to be intense. It's hard to do that, especially because everyone's got their own stuff going on. But you guys, I know, like in the video, you guys all go for an awesome bike ride together.
Yeah.
So how does that look, you know, to not discourage people about being lonely? Yeah, you're not going to have a family, but you got your father. So you're a spiritual father to people. What does that look like in like real life? That's how did you overcome that living as a priest now? Like, that's what I'm always been interested in, because just a real quick aside, my son's 7 and he saw a cool vocation video. And one of the parishioners here is in the seminary, and he's cool. And my son's like, he's so awesome. And he saw a video of them like paintballing, and he's like, I want to go to seminary. So now he's like thinking about it, but it's like everyone's view of a priest is you guys are praying, you guys are in the church, and you're with sick and dying people and those kinds of things, but you guys have no fun.
Right.
You guys are alone by yourself, and you guys have no lives, you know. So paint a picture of like how that's not true, because I know obviously, you know, Father Declan and all the priests, you guys got an awesome brotherhood of what's possible for that and how intentional that is to bring it all together, to not be lonely, because it can be, you know, that's a real part of it, but to how to be intentional to get rid of that part of it, because it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. So to give some background for everyone who's watching here, a shout out to the SJE media team for working with us in the vocation office to create a couple wonderful videos. One of them was a trailer that was produced for a recent vocation gala and is now up on YouTube.
Yeah.
So the title of this trailer, about 2.5 minutes, is called Priesthood, the Ride of Your Life.
Mm-hmm.
And so the themes that we wanted to be able to produce is that the priesthood is a brotherhood,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
which in the video is shown through our communal celebration of the Mass as a brotherhood,
Mm-hmm.
and together riding bikes together on the road of life. So one of the main purposes of this video is we wanted to create something that is an element that you don't often see in vocation videos. It's always about live this joyful life, do what a priest does, but it's not normally expressed in the sense of join a brotherhood,
Yeah.
where which is the opposite of loneliness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for a lot of young men who might be considering the priesthood, but celibacy is some type of roadblock, or it's the only image of priesthood is one that is full of loneliness. When you see a brotherhood like that, and that's an attractive lifestyle of other men that you can lean on, who are only other priests can know what you yourself are going through, right? I can't know what a married father is going through, right? So it's hard for me to kind of empathize with that, and I'm sure vice versa for you guys to know what like priests are going through. It's very important to have that brotherhood, and men aspire naturally through our masculinity to do stuff with each other, right? We don't like talking about things all the time, although we're talking about things here,
Yeah.
but like doing stuff with your hands or with your feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we like to do in this diocese is occasionally take what we call brew tours, biking trips with the groups of 5, 6, 7 of us. Maybe twice a year we tend to do it, is we'll do a circuit. One of our circuits is through Michigan, Southwest Michigan. And another tour is through like the Erie Lackawanna Trail and Prairie Duneland. And we'll visit breweries on like a 40, 50,
cool.
60 mile circuit.
That's cool.
And the more breweries we visit, subsequently, the slower we get on our trail,
Yeah.
on our speed. But it's still just a great day full of biking and just sitting down, enjoying beers together. So that's what we like doing together. And then multiple times throughout the year too, a whole lot more. We'll just take rides.
You guys have like weekly, like me. I know some groups have like meetings, fraternity like meetings where you guys get together.
Yeah, so like
go out to
support
dinner,
groups,
come in, yeah,
things like that, prayer groups. So I have one of those, and I meet with a support group regularly.
So to be just real,
Mm-hmm.
brotherhood's great.
Yeah.
Love brotherhood. One of my favorite parts of being in seminary was the brotherhood. But you're a young man and you're discerning, I'm going to commit the rest of my life to this.
Mm-hmm.
How do you discern the wife not having a wife and not having the intimacy that comes with having a wife? Not just the family and the kids but how do you actually tackle that question if you are going through seminary at a young age, but there's vocations, men come in later in life.
Mm-hmm.
What was your experience of that like? And then B, how do you as vocation director now help accompany men through that discernment of their own?
It's an interesting question because I'm trying to put myself back in my 20-year-old self and what I thought about it. And I don't think I really thought that question a whole lot.
Okay.
I did date when I was in high school and into college. And I remember thinking to myself, this will be something tough to give up, but because of this sense of like God is calling me to this, I'm willing to set aside this other good.
Wow.
God's calling me to something greater. I'm willing to set this aside.
Hmm.
But it's hard to put myself back in that because that was 13 years ago.
So how do you walk with young men who are kind of asking that question of themselves now?
Yeah, so I can recall that during the seminary, I had a few moments where I just remember thinking like, oh, like I'm still human and I still have these like desires for communion,
Yeah.
right? And so I do remember having those questions again. Am I firmly making this decision freely of a celibate lifestyle? And I think that's kind of helping me as I'm dealing with our own seminarians.
Yeah.
I've only been a vocation director for 4 months now.
Hmm.
So I'm still kind of working on those relationships with our seminarians, seeing what it is that they're dealing with. But they're
Yeah.
all young men. None of us is neutral as far as not having any type of like sexuality or just like desire.
Sexual desire,
yeah. Yeah. So I'm very well aware of that.
Mhm.
They're young men, but it's something that you don't want someone to repress natural desire.
Yeah.
And if they are called to married life, you don't want them to push through with a vocation that they thought they had, but maybe they don't now.
Yeah.
Maybe that God is inviting them,
Yeah.
like you're called to married life, or you're called to be a father, right? And you wouldn't want someone to go through with priesthood if that's not what they're called to.
Yeah.
So right now it's working with the young men to just make sure that they're authentically listening to the voice of God and able to freely make that decision.
Mhm.
And that's why you're in seminary 6 to 8 years. So then you have that
Yeah.
time to make that informed decision.
And I
Yeah.
know a lot of them now are doing the no phones for a whole year. I'm hearing that too,
Yeah.
because the phone is a pull. I know it is in my life. And
No phone for a year?
a lot of that's the
We would
trend.
give up our electronics like if we go on retreat or something.
Yeah, like they're
But
talking.
that's like a week.
I'm hearing that. I'm seeing that on social media. Like that's what they're trying to do is like because there's a million pulls on that. I mean, obviously the to help you focus on because let's get back to what a vocation is. Vocation is a call. It's different than what major am I picking or where should I go on spring break or different things like that. And like I said earlier, like everyone uses discernment sometimes to avoid these decisions, because let's just talk about what's a decision. When you declare a decision, like I'm going to lose weight. I want to lose 20 pounds. Once you declare that that's what you want to do, it becomes a judge, because if you don't do it, you failed. You didn't do it. So once you announce what the goal is, it almost becomes like a judge to you. So therefore, a lot of people don't like to announce their goals or make plans or these things because it's a standard that you have to, when you don't hit it, and you can't hide it, you can't run from it. If you told yourself, wrote it down, I want to do X, and you didn't do it, now you're not doing those things. So a lot of times people just don't even make a goal, don't make a thing. But this is like a way bigger than I want to lose weight, or this is going to be a lifetime, whether that's married life, whether that's religious sister, or in the priesthood. It's just it's a life commitment, and then it's one of those things where it's like a lot of people. The phone, I think, would be a lot of ways to just delaying making any kind of decision, because what do we do on the phones? Everyone's just distracted. You're just distracted. No one's thinking about not focused, and with the discernment, what's the typical process look like for somebody? For you, it took what, from 16 to like 22-ish, where you were kind of the first time you thought about it, and it took a lot of time. It's like, what's the average? Someone comes to you and they say, I know you're just starting, so I'm just saying in general, like, what? Hey, I'm thinking about this. Like, hey, would you say like, hey, go away to college, see if this is maybe when you're there, you're going to think something different, to take some time, keep praying about it, keep talking about it, or is it different for everybody?
Yeah, so the process is kind of different for everybody.
Yeah.
So the ones that I work with, normally in my case, as like a parish priest. So I'm a pastor. I have 3 churches in my parish.
So
I still have
that's
like
a
a group of young men in my parish, and wherever parish I'm at, I try to extend the invitation to start considering the priesthood early on.
Yeah.
Not like, is God calling you to be a priest, but
Sign
hey,
on the dotted line.
come join me at this, Andrew dinner,
Yeah.
which we have at the end of November. So it's where priests invite young men who they might consider the priesthood. And so come join a bunch of young guys. I normally try to bring 6 or 7 young guys from my parish, just bring a big van of all of them to an event. Hey, it's like a fraternal event. Just get to know other young guys.
Andrew dinners are awesome.
They are.
I still remember my Andrew dinner.
Okay.
They're awesome
It's
experiences.
just like a come and see experience.
I was going to say, is that's because Andrew told his brother, come
Yeah.
see?
Mhm.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's normally my way of just inviting these young guys. And if they respond yes, then they obviously have some type of heart open. Like
Yeah.
they see in my ministry at least something that may be somewhat attractive, right? And something they would be open to exploring more.
Mm-hmm.
So I extend that invite, and some of these young guys, without being able to articulate, I think God's calling me to the priesthood. Very few of them at 16-year-olds are going to say that. But they will say, sure, I'll come with.
Sure.
Sure, I'll come the next
I'll check
time.
it out.
Yeah, I'll come join this small group.
Yeah.
So you get them, rather than having them explore the question of, is God calling me to the priesthood? How is God calling me to pray about my vocation right now? How is God wanting for me as a disciple? You don't want them to have to answer the question of their vocation.
Because it could be overwhelming.
before they even know about discipleship, before they even start praying,
Yeah.
right? They need to learn how to pray and become disciples before they can discover where God's calling them to.
You're not trying to overwhelm them with those larger
No.
topics that they can eventually be called to explore. You're just calling them to be faithful to today.
Mhm.
Today, how is God calling you to be faithful?
Right.
And come check out this thing.
Mhm.
Let's have this conversation.
Well, their first vocation or all of our vocation is the universal call to holiness. So
Right.
that makes sense, is that before you can go to the next step, are you at least working towards being a disciple before you try to take the next step? Because if you're not doing this now,
Right.
priesthood, you don't have a taste of what being virtuous and being holy and set apart and those kinds of things are. But that makes sense, So you would invite them into more prayer, Bible studies, or youth groups, or different kinds of things to be exposed to other people being disciples.
Right. And so encouraging them through that process. If they happen to be in high school, keep encouraging them through. If they go on in college, you make sure that they're connected to
Newman Center.
Newman Center or connected with you. I had a young men's group that I started at my last parish, my first year as a priest. This was 5 or 6 years ago. And these guys, there were about 8 of them, and they were seniors in high school, and they were friends with each other. So we started a young men's group that met every few weeks. They went off to college. When they came home on breaks, we still met. We would have like volleyball nights and things like that. 2 of those young guys ended up going into the seminary, which was great. And then a whole bunch of them, they all still go to church, are very faithful
That's good.
young men.
So another testament to these small groups, especially with people who are serious,
It has an
trying to be
effect.
disciples. Yeah.
Yeah, so the whole issue when it comes to going back to our original discussion, inability to make decision, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the younger generation, you might just call it like risk aversion.
Yeah.
So like when you have to take risks, you're confronted with that. If you can just scroll on your phone and avoid taking risks, and you can just like tap into whatever distraction comes by, you can kind of just put aside the obvious confrontation, like this is where I might be led, or I have to start making a decision. So like 70 years ago, when our grandparents were getting married, you were expected to get married by the time you were like 20 or 22.
Yeah.
Or else, like, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
But
Or
now,
what's wrong with you?
Yeah. So things have changed quite a bit now that we don't have to make those decisions so early on. It's easier to kick the can down the road that you don't really have to make decisions. And so it's easier for us to take account of the risks that are involved in a decision and just be aversive to that. Like if it's too risky, I don't have to tap into it.
Yeah.
I can keep discerning it.
Yeah.
And even if all these signs are coming my way that God's leading me in a direction, I can say, well, I'm still discerning it. I can just, it's too risky. I don't want to tap
Which
into that.
the threat there is you get caught paralyzed really in a cloud of discernment.
Right.
Are there like practical steps or tips that you could identify that help people engage in discernment?
Yes. One of them is to get outside of yourself. So when it's all up in here or down here, then who's going to hold you accountable? So if you're discerning vocation seriously, then it's good to have someone on the outside. If it's a spiritual director, like maybe a priest, maybe a friend, maybe another trusted adult or mentor. At least for me, there were just many different priests and things, and they kept confronting me with the question or inviting me to consider. And it took a laywoman to to finally be the last straw, someone I didn't even know, who invited me. And so it helps to have someone on the outside who can then hold you accountable and ask you those questions. And if it happens to be a small group, even better.
Does it have to be a priest? That's spiritual director?
No, it doesn't have to be.
So what do you look for? I'm thinking like if I'm in a position of someone who's seeking to engage discernment, vocation or something else, what am I looking for in a person who can kind of fulfill that spiritual director maybe role?
You're looking for a mentor who's willing to share their life with you. Someone who lives authentically, intentionally as a faithful Christian, and who can help you to be formed as a disciple yourself so that you can listen to the voice of God.
Yeah.
And
sounds like someone who has traits that you can aspire to yourself. Yeah.
What was the line like vulnerability isn't like, oh, it's obviously open yourself up, but it's like inviting somebody into your fishbowl, like being that comfortable enough to have show somebody your true self. And because ultimately that's what it is. It's like we hide a lot of that, I always was like a shadow vocation. It's like this thing's, because it's a hard life. It's like you're sacrificing, married life's a hard life also. It's like I have to die to myself every day between my wife and my kids of what I want to do. It's a similar thing. It's obviously different, but that trust and being able to be vulnerable, like with your feelings, and especially as men, I know myself, talking about feelings isn't our top thing that we're good at. I'm getting better at it, I think.
Hence the cognac.
Maybe. No, it's all these small groups. Man, it's like we were just talking about that. I help lead a men's group, and one of the guys in our group, he also helps do alpha, and we have another small group we do. And he's like, I just don't know. I was like, I'm just sharing too much this week. He's like, I don't know if I could do this. He's like, because it's like always like
he's feeling raw.
He's just like it's like
raw.
all right. He's like it's like just all right. He's like all right. Let's just work because we work out. We meet at the park and we work out, and then we do a little fellowship, and then we go to mass and confession. He's like, I just I'm like, he's tapped out. It's like emotionally tapped out from sharing too much, being, too much. So I know for men, it's hard because it's like, no, that's not, sharing your feelings or stuff like that. So especially something as serious as your life, your vocation, your, how you're going to spend, whatever, how many years you have on earth. It's a big deal. It's a big decision. So
having that outside voice is important to help.
Having the outside voice.
Okay.
What are some other? You said journaling. You did some. I know I do some journaling.
Another one I think would be
Adoration.
just having a regimented daily routine of life.
Yeah.
Like have something planned out. Like these are the
Really, how does that help? Really unpack that for me.
Just making sure that you're sticking true to like a daily regimen, right? It's not something that kind of goes with the wind, but it's something where you're waking up at a regular hour, offering your day up to God.
Nice.
If you're praying the rosary each day, you're staying consistent to that. If you're going to adoration each day, stay consistent to that. If you're using certain reading materials or journaling, just stay consistent with that, because the way that we discern our vocation is not from some big light bulb moment that comes out of nowhere when we're maybe out on the top of the Rocky Mountains or something. While that's a powerful experience, the way that you kind of discern where God's leading you is, for most people, through your just daily regimen of life, when you're in your everyday life, and like little by little, God starts to reveal to you through consistency where he's leading you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you stay true to that.
And that's good training of just, I'm a regimented guy. So he's like,
it's discipline. Really.
It's discipline because, it's our systems and our processes and how we do things. And obviously eventually be a priest, it's good practice in anything as far as getting up and creating these routines and these disciplines, because you are a product of your systems and your I did the 75 hard. So I had to do something to shock my system because I thought I was falling out of it. And I'm like, once I did that, I'm like, I can do anything. So it's like, but building, can I be consistent, get up at the same time every day? And it's crazy how that does work for me. I've been doing daily mass for 3 years. I need those things in my life because if not, I feel like I'm in chaos. That's just me personally. I know I do this on this day. I need order. Yes, I need order.
I'd say that really depends on the season of life you're in.
Yeah.
So I've got a 4-year-old and an almost 2-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
I love that suggestion because it's not just discerning vocations. It's how do you discern in general, right? It's not just deliberating. How do you invite God into the decisions that you're trying to make? Whether it's a work issue, a family issue, a personal thing you're trying to make a decision on. I like the regiment, and I like having pillars that I'm going to engage in regularly. And those pillars are time for prayer, time for growing intellectually as best as I can, because I can't make a decision if I'm not informed. And time for adoration, because you can't be away from God. If Jesus is truly our friend, friends can't be absent from one another. And even just contemplating God for the mere fact that he's worthy of our contemplation. And so not so much, that's the thing I miss about seminary the most, the routine. I love the routine. You just get in the zone and it feels good. But when you're living life and you've got family pulling at you and you've got work pulling at you, you've got everything else pulling at you, really, I try to anchor myself in what do I want to make sure I get done so I can stay healthy and balanced and take care of myself. So having someone that can help draw you outside of yourself, anchoring yourself in some sort of routine, being faithful to daily life. Would you say there's anything else that would help people engage in discernment? Or is that a good place to start?
I think that's definitely a good place to start.
Yeah.
I think the question of vocation, so I think you've wanted to bring that up. What is a vocation?
Yeah.
I think this leads nicely into that. You talk about your primary vocation. Every Christian baptized is called the universal vocation of holiness, right? No matter what your state in life is. And then like your secondary vocation, which is what I kind of come into now, is what state of life in the church that your lifestyle is inviting you to a life of service in the church. And then maybe your tertiary vocation is like your job, like what you do for a living, way you make money. So your secondary vocation, we would say in the church, those are your like your four main like lifestyles. And what I would call a vocation, it's a calling, right? But that's very often used. I guess a more definite definition that I would use is it's a lifestyle of service in the church, right? So as your vocation, if it's to priesthood, if it's to religious life, it's to marriage, or if it's to single life, like either as someone who's never been married or divorced or widowed or whatever. Doesn't mean you're like stuck with one all the way through life, but like what is your lifestyle right now that you are living? And it's a lifestyle of service, meaning it's not about you. Your vocation is always directed toward others. And how can you serve
I like that definition. I've always said vocation's how you live God's love in the world, because we're called to love God and love our neighbor as ourselves. But God's love is demonstrated through service. So I like how that brings it to a more abstract, concrete point.
Yeah, so when you look at like the 7 sacraments in the church, you have 3 sacraments of initiation, you've got 2 sacraments of healing, and then you have your 2 sacraments of vocation or 2 sacraments of service, which is marriage and holy orders.
Okay.
Right, so with both of those, it's not about you. Now your life is meant to be poured out in service to other people. So how does that work in the priesthood? We don't exclusively have love towards one particular person, a spouse, but it's more openly shared with everybody that we're called to be spiritual fathers toward.
Yeah.
Right. Same thing with religious life. If you're a religious sister, you're called to be a bride of Christ. Now your lifestyle is living that celibate lifestyle in community with other brides of Christ, and now giving yourself in service to others, poured out to Christ himself. in marriage, your lifestyle is your exclusive love toward one person
Mm-hmm.
and whatever gifts from God that he decides to give to you, your children.
Yeah.
And that's your lifestyle. And if you're single, then maybe you're more free to pour out your heart to others in need or more to the community.
I appreciate that you listed the 4 and you included the single, because there are people that feel called to, they don't feel called to particularly engage religious
Right.
consecration or marriage. They live a single life, but they want to do it in service of others. They just, like you said, pour themselves
They
out.
can
in
live a
service of
holy
others.
life as like single
Yeah.
people, as like doctors or lawyers or factory workers or teachers,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. They
Yeah.
can still live
My
singly.
mother-in-law, she's like not, she's a third order Carmelite, but that's how she's lived her life after she,
Intentionally.
well, after
Cool.
she got separated, and that's
Yeah.
how she's lived her life. And, she's
Vocation
happy and
seems to
holy
be-
and loves it. And
When you hear the word vocation, it seems to be synonymous with priesthood, though.
Right.
yeah,
So in my line of work, it is because I'm the vocation director for the Diocese of Gary, Priesthood in the Diocese of Gary.
Yeah.
Religious orders will have their own vocation directors. It's unfortunate there's no vocation director for like marriage in any diocese, when that is the one that most
people
young
go to.
people go to, and that's the one that you have the least amount of preparation for.
Why do you think that is?
I have no idea. I think it was just society just always depended upon the well-being of the family. You learned what marriage looked like from your parents and family members. You were just expected. You got married.
or you learn what you didn't want.
Yeah,
A
exactly.
lot of families, it's like, I know I didn't want this part. Like, that's how I grew up without religion.
Yeah.
So, but I just, the examples, like we always say, more is caught than taught. So it's like, yeah, that's how you, but for me, I started studying. I read a lot of like marriage books and how to be a good dad. And like, now we're lucky with the media. There's a lot of good podcasts. There's a lot of people talking about it. I mean, there's
So
a
it
lot.
wasn't all just from your pre-Cana weekend. Right?
I didn't have a weekend.
That
I
didn't
had
cover
one day.
everything.
I had one day. Yeah.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we
No.
expect like to form couples for marriage in such a short period of time with so little preparation. And yet in the seminary, we get 6 to 8
Years of highly
formation
focused.
to be intentional about this decision that I am committing my life to celibacy, this lifestyle. Why can't we accompany married couples?
This is a rabbit hole, but
Yeah, it is a rabbit hole.
yeah, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole right now because I can't but pick at this. So
Yeah, go ahead.
most people choose the path, the vocation of marriage, and we don't spend a lot of time forming them in that vocation. And yet it's a vocation that once you enter into it, could be hard to get out of. And that's the thing that frustrates me as someone who works in a parish, walking alongside others, and you get to hear their stories and actually become a part of their stories. And so you get married, but you might realize that I wasn't ready for this. This isn't the right person. And in some places within the church, depending on where you are, you can just get looped into, like, annulments are very difficult. Separation just becomes a very difficult thing where you can just pick up and say, you know what, this isn't going to work for whatever the reason is, and then get remarried. Like it's very easy to get in, but it's so hard to get out. And that's the thing that frustrates me with marriage in particular.
Yeah, and with marriage in particular, unlike priesthood, it takes two. So
Yeah.
with priesthood, if like I'm not feeling great, or if I feel like I'm not called to this, well, it's no one else's fault. I mean, it's just between me and God. But with marriage, you could be trying your best, and it may not be reciprocated. It takes two.
But if you had the standard higher, it's hard enough to get married couples to even go to the weekend or the
Yeah.
Cana as it is. Like the husband, they're dragging him. Like, oh, why do I have to go to this thing? We're just getting married. Like if you set the bar even
But
higher,
if you make the
like
bar
church weddings
higher,
would go. I don't know.
Do they not
I
come
don't
to
know.
us
Do
at all?
they don't come at
So
all?
when you talk about the whole thing with vocation, it's vocations in the church, right? Maybe not everyone has a vocation in the church or is actively living vocation in the church, right? So marriage is conferred by the state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So marriage, you can get married to whoever you want.
Yeah, but
It's-
in the church, it should be something. We
In the
should try
church, it's
if
raised
we-
to a higher level.
Yeah, we should higher the standards because then people, if we higher the standards, people will raise to them. If we keep them low, you're going to get low
Right.
usually.
But your vocation is to the service of the good of the church. So if you don't, if you're not involved in the church or you don't see as any connection to the church, like I'm getting married in order to serve someone else, not for my own benefit, then how can that be like an authentic, like vocation that you're called to? So, well,
the pictures
it takes
were
a lot
the pictures
more
were pretty though.
intentionality.
The pictures were really pretty.
They were really pretty.
Yeah, the church was really gorgeous, and that's what I always hear. It's like, wait, you got married, you went through this because the church was.
We
pretty?
get those calls so often, which like I'm in no way like casting.
They like the day chapel.
Yeah. Well, they don't even know about the day chapel. They come to the main church and they're like, they just fall in love with the place, which is a beautiful space, and they want to have their wedding there. And our stance is, well, A, congratulations. That's awesome that you guys are entering into that chapter. But B, we'd love for you to first become a part of the community. A, so the community can get to know you. And so that we can, when it comes time for you to get married, we stand there as a witness to that before God. Because in marriage, they confer, as you know, Father, and I'm sure you know, that we confer the sacrament to each other, right? The husband to the wife and the wife to the husband. And so, yeah, the priest and the congregation stand there as witnesses. And so we want to do that. We want to witness to that. That drives so many people away. Like once we say, hey, we want you to be here for a while. We want to get to know you. We expect you to do these things because we want to walk alongside you.
Yeah.
We want to make sure you're ready.
But
a good number of them just turn away.
But like you're saying but then you're actually
Some
getting
of them
people,
don't, but
you're
yeah.
getting people in the church who want to serve and be part of a community. And it's not just for they're thinking, you have to think a little bit harder about this vocation. It's serious. It's one of the most serious things you're going to do if that's going to be married.
So,
Yeah.
On a deeper level, though, I think it reveals something, and it reveals like a totally different worldviews that we're working with.
Yeah.
Right. So if your worldview is basically very worldly, just like a natural worldview, the way that the world looks at things without thinking with a supernatural mindset, well, then, of course, you're thinking about the wedding day. You're not thinking about the next 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
You're only thinking about the immediate future and what weddings you served as a bridesmaid or a groomsman in, and how you can make it the best day possible. But you're not thinking about like, where does this fit in God's eyes? So you have very competing worldviews. And so the way the church sees it is a supernatural worldview. You're getting married in order to serve the other person. I'm becoming a priest in order to serve others because it's for the greater good of the kingdom of God. And so if you don't have that mindset, then it doesn't make sense to the world, the way the lenses that we as the church put on, that we see the grace of God being affected through these sacraments, through marriage, that if you look at it through the lenses of the world, then you're not going to see that and it won't make sense. And so you have to be able to see it with supernatural lenses to see where is the grace of God now invading my life and making this now a vocation. That's not just something that was created by man, but something that God has given to me as my mission in life.
My wife and I, we did a podcast where we talk about some of these issues. And there's a tradition in Croatia that when they get married, they bring in a crucifix. Yeah. And that they tell the other person, you're my cross, which means obviously you're not, bad, that I'm willing to die for you, and then they pray with that, and then that gets placed in a place of honor in their house, and that's where they're set up their prayer altars or their chapels in their houses or just on the wall or whatever. But as a constant reminder that that's what marriage is. It's service. It's dying to yourself for the other. That's what love is. It's not a feeling or emotion because those come and go, and some days you're mad and some days you're not. But every day you're called to act with your will for the good of the other one, to die, to put them first, and especially children and stuff like that. But that's such a harsh image, though. But it's true, though. It's like that. The better my marriage gets is the more I sacrifice and deny myself. And that's with every vocation, whether that's being the best priest, being the best single person, religious, is that, the measure of we give ourselves away is where the happiness and the joy comes from, is that it's counterintuitive to the world. The world doesn't see it that way. It's like, what's in it for me? What can I get? Those kinds of things.
You're always looking out for number one.
Yeah, but we know when you live a life of giving of yourself, that it's a beautiful thing. It's just like, so for you, you're starting this new journey, but you've been a priest for years. And have you found that direct correlation is that the more that you give yourself into this ministry, this bigger thing, obviously vocations we're talking about, but in general, that's part of the other fact of how I think the church could do a better job of selling it is these heroic priests, like living a life of, what's going on the altar, like not like dumbing it down, but like what actually is going on, like what the privilege a priest gets to have of being in persona Christi and to give sacraments and to be there with people on their last, on their deathbeds and to be part of these, baptisms and marriages and all the different sacraments. But to emphasize that it's such an honor. At least I know I look at it that way. But how to sell that fact? Brotherhood's cool. Helping people, but being a heroic priest, how to be, the best priest you could be by sacrificing yourself and carrying it out in a way where it's, to be a saint, basically, like we're all called to that. But as a priest, you're helping all these you're a spiritual father to everybody. Like how to show that, whether that's with the media team, there's a lot of cool videos about, like what actually goes on at the mass. We talked about that last.
No pun
episode.
intended, but I saw Fishers of Men and it hooked me.
No,
Do they still show that at Andrew dinners?
no, I think that
Did that get phased out?
had its years. I remember watching it when I first started discerning. I was
Yeah.
like 16 and it had just come out.
Yeah.
But that was a long time ago. And so
Man, that movie would get me
phased
so
out.
pumped.
Yeah.
I've probably seen it over 100 times.
Really?
Well, because you watch it for yourself,
I've never seen.
and then you're putting it on for other guys,
Yeah.
right? What's hot now? Like, is there a replacement?
There's just so much out there that
Really?
I guess nothing is.
Because that was like it at one point. It was just like
Yeah,
Fishers
because
of
there
Men.
wasn't much else.
Yeah.
So now there's a whole lot.
We got to make the next Fishers of Men.
Yeah,
just
how much
something
time do you have?
All right.
What's your budget look
Yeah.
like?
What are you guys doing after this?
Yeah,
Mike's like,
do
I'm
more
going back.
Viking scenes and celebrating mass scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
How does somebody engage with you? Like, let's say somebody local that might
Yep.
be watching this or listening to this and they want to explore.
yeah, so I have had a good number of young men who have reached out to me since I've become vocation director, and so the way that this works is, ideally, let's just talk about maybe the qualities and what you would expect in somebody who's approaching me as the vocation director.
Okay.
Right? Ideally, you have some type of connection to your home parish. You're involved in something. Maybe you're serving as lector, or maybe if you're in high school, you're an altar server, in some type of service or outreach ministry, in some connection to the parish community where, again, they can testify to the fact that you are actively involved in this parish, right? You have some type of working relationship with your pastor. He knows who you are. Okay. So, and you have somewhat of an active prayer life, and you've
Yeah.
been discerning, not because you can't find a girlfriend or you can't date anybody or you don't think you're called to marriage and therefore you're called to priesthood.
Yeah.
Probably not the best reasons to want to become a priest, or, you want to feed off the church. I don't know.
Right.
There's lots of different reasons or bad reasons to become a priest, just like there are bad reasons to get married.
hmm
So you want to kind of explore those reasons of, maybe why you want to become a priest. When someone meets with me, I just try to get to know them. How can we best accompany them through this process? So if someone comes to me and, they seem like they would be a great candidate for the priesthood, that they exhibit all these qualities and they've been actively involved in their parish and there's nothing glaring in the background, right? Because we have psychological examinations, there are background checks, there's all the usual things that you would expect.
Yeah.
Especially with everything that the church has gone through in the last 20 years or so.
hmm
We have lots of protocols in place that, are for our benefit and for the benefit of the applicant too.
Sure.
So when someone comes and talks to me, I just try to kind of decipher those things. What connection do you have with the church? What's your relationship with God look like? What's your relationship with your parish look like? And if somebody seems like they would be not an ideal candidate, but someone who is a promising candidate for application, then I would walk them through the application process. And that would require a few interviews, psychological exam, your medical exams, other things like
Sure.
that. And then as the person starts applying to the seminary, I'm not the one who accepts them. I give a recommendation to the bishop, and then the bishop would then accept them into the seminary.
Does the bishop spend time getting to know them, or what does that look like?
I think that they would sit down with the bishop at least once and have some type of interview. So then,
And I know
he
you've
can
just
get to
4
know
months into it, so.
them.
But okay,
Right.
so the
But it-
bishop's the one that accepts them.
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
bishop would accept them, and so you're accepted as a seminarian by the diocese first.
Okay.
You don't apply to the seminary separately. You have to be accepted by the diocese, and then you are given permission to then apply to a certain seminary that the bishop sends you to.
Oh,
So then you apply to that seminary, they would accept you.
Mhm.
Normally, if your diocese accepted you, then the seminary would accept you. And then you have to go through all the academic things that that seminary and school would expect of you.
priestly formation, academic formation.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah. hmm
And so then you're kind of integrated right into the calendar schedule.
hmm
And then I will see you at Christmas break then.
Yeah. Now that's, you mentioned diocese. So is there something other than diocese that you can discern? Like,
Yeah, so I'm responsible for vocations to the Diocese of Gary, priestly vocations, which is a very small pocket, right? So you have dioceses all across the country. If, let's say someone was going to Valparaiso University,
yeah.
young man who came to me and said, I would like to be a priest, but he's from like Missouri.
Yeah.
I would probably ask him, well, is this your home or is Missouri your home?
Yeah.
Where are you better connected? If he says it's back there, then I would say, well, then great. Talk to your home priest, talk to that vocation director back there. I will help you in this process
Yeah.
to maybe help with whatever discernment resources you need. But
The
we
thing
try
that-
to make sure that they're kind of well connected with where they're from and where they would plan to serve in the future.
The thing that got me when I was first discerning early on, I didn't know that there was distinctions in the different types of priests that you could be,
Mm-hmm.
right? You've got all the different orders that exist. Could you speak a little bit to that, Father?
Yeah. So, in addition to diocesan life, we're called secular priests. Doesn't mean we're atheist priests. We're secular,
Yeah.
meaning we're not part of a religious order. But you have all kinds of religious orders across the country, also societies of apostolic life, special designations in the church. So, some of the religious orders would be Franciscans, Dominicans, Jesuits.
Mm-hmm.
Carmelites,
Mm-hmm.
one of my
Shout out.
favorites. My favorite.
So there's all kinds of these orders all across the country. They all have their own vocation directors. They all have their own superiors, kind of like a bishop would be superior of his diocese. So in those particular orders, they all have their own stages of formation. And normally they have a novitiate, which, as you said, like the cell phone fast,
Yeah.
intensive prayer, community life, those would be expected of you in your novitiate stages. Then you might have a few years of
Novitiate's
study.
just a fancy word for preparation, right?
Yeah, so being a novice.
Yeah.
So anyone who's a novice is in that novitiate stage. That's the initial stage.
Mhm.
Okay, and then you might take certain vows throughout your time in formation
Those are just commitments that you're making on your journey
on your journey.
as you're
Yeah,
discerning.
so you
yeah.
might have first vows, that you might have temporary vows,
Yeah.
and then down the road you would make final vows.
Mhm.
The difference between diocesan priesthood and like religious priesthood is in religious life, you're making a commitment to your community, a commitment to the Dominican order. And you could be either a priest or a brother. And then you just stay with that. Now, either way, there's no one is better than the other, right? Priests aren't above brothers in religious orders. They're all part of the same community. They're all making the same vows to that community.
Yeah.
It's just one would be a priest and one would still remain as a brother.
Mhm.
But their commitment is to their order.
Mhm.
So, for instance, as a Jesuit, I'm told it takes like 12 or 13 years to
Yeah.
become a priest. It's a long time. Lots of education, lots of, I guess, field work, internships, different things like
You're not taking vows, though, are you?
that. Right. So, in diocesan priesthood, you don't take what are called vows, you take what are called promises. Right? My brother asked me when he wasn't familiar with the whole thing, I said, we don't take vows, we take promises. He says, does that mean they're less important? Like you can break a promise, you can't break a vow. So,
Good question.
Yes. So religious sisters take vows.
Yeah.
Religious brothers, priests take vows to their community. Married couples take vows to one another, right? So those are dedicated toward each other. And priests take what are called promises, right? Promises of service. So it's not necessarily dedicated to their community. Now it's dedicated to like the church in general.
Mhm.
So on the day of your ordination, the bishop asks you many different questions to which you respond, I do. Okay, do you promise to yada, yada, yada? Okay. And not that they're any less important than vows, they're just called by a different name.
Is it 3 promises?
No, there's lots of,
4, 5? How many are you
I
taking?
think there were 7.
7
You take
promises?
promises as a deacon, you take promises as a priest.
Yeah.
So when you're ordained as a priest, you're already been ordained as a deacon before that,
Yeah.
transitional deacon. Right? Normally in religious life, you take the 3 vows of chastity, poverty, and obedience. Right? So chastity, what everyone is called to, poverty, you're giving your personal resources over to your community. So you don't keep your own personal bank accounts. As secular priests, we have our own personal bank accounts. We have to save for our retirement.
Yeah.
So the diocese, we could get a pension, but when we're retired, it's not like they just take us in and say, we'll take care of you. You don't have to pay for anything anymore.
Mhm.
In religious life, I understand that's how most orders take care of it. But as a secular priest, we are responsible for our own retirement, saving for ourselves,
Mhm.
having our own salaries. So we don't take a vow of poverty, right? We just live it.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
So be generous to our
That's the
priests.
joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So, and then obedience, we do take a promise of obedience to the bishop.
Yeah.
If you're a religious community, you take a vow of obedience to your superior.
Mhm.
And then they might have additional vows, like Benedictines take additional vow of stability, like
Yeah.
staying in the same place or same state for an extended period of time.
Mhm. Wow.
So,
Yeah, just priests in general, like the name, and it's a sacrifice. I mean, that's why we just don't have pastors. We have priests because there's a sacrifice. It's like your life is a sacrifice, but it's a beautiful thing. From the moment I became Catholic, I was just like, I almost looked at priests like superheroes, like, because I just know, like, I believe, like, that was one of the gifts that I got when I became Catholic, is that I knew the Eucharist was Jesus. Immediately. Like, that was an extraordinary gift of faith.
Yeah.
And ever since, it's just like, in which we should hold our obviously, your people, but to hold them up with respect and honor and those things. And I think that there's obviously, we're working our way back and trying to do that. But I think it helps having younger priests who are dynamic, who, the thing we talked about last week and I talked about my show is normal. We don't have to be weird to be Catholic. Like, you guys like to hang out with your friends and go on bike rides and do stuff like that. It doesn't mean, we're all hermits living in a cave and like, we don't talk to anybody. We don't have any friends. We don't like any of the same things that normal people like. We can be in the world, but not be of the world, but still live a life that's, interesting and meaningful, that doesn't have to be just me in the room praying, which is nice. And if you want to do that, that's cool too. But it's like, you still have friends, that are not priests. You still have a family, just because, but that's what the world kind of paints it. It's like, it's kind of like a weird thing. It's like, no, I think it's a beautiful life. And I'm glad that we're able to have you on to kind of talk about it, because some people don't know what the process is. Like, as a
There's
convert.
so much more we can explore.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully, what was it called? The drink? Glug?
glug.
We'll get some glug made and we'll
Yeah,
explore.
because Christmas is coming up. It's a holiday mulled
Oh.
wine. So
Oh, is it?
Make sure.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah. Right.
GaryVocations.com. Is that the site?
GaryVocations.com.
Nice. Well, Father Nate, thanks for joining us and sharing a bit of your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for answering the call of a lady tapping on your shoulder, because we need good priests and we always need more priests. So thank you for your priesthood.
Want to sign us off?
Well, thanks for watching. Hopefully, if you know somebody who's thinking about it, encourage them. Our society shouldn't try to say, no, don't be a priest. I know a lot of parents that, like me, my son started talking about it. I'm encouraging. I bought him a mass kit. I'm like, he wants to say mass and I want to help him out. I'm not like you have to do this, but
Send me
not
where you got that mask kit from. I've been looking. I can't find
on
a good one.
Etsy. We got it on Etsy. If we'll think about it, we'll put it in the show
Yeah,
notes.
send me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to.
It was like $70, but it's wood. It's real nice. But he's done it like he does it. I catch him in his room. He's by himself doing it.
I came
It's
home
like-
from, we do something called Encounter, which is like Eucharistic adoration, praise and worship. And my boy came home like, it was 8:30 at night after the encounter. And we're trying to put his sister to sleep. And he's just yelling from the kitchen. And I walk in, I'm like, buddy, what are you doing? He's like, shh, I'm talking to the people. He was pretending he was Father Declan giving a homily.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
His theology was all jacked up. So there was no.
But encourage parents to, if that's something, don't be like, oh no, you got to get married. You got to do this. Don't just tamp it down right away, because I know that I'm sure that happens a lot. No, you got to go to college. You got to go get married.
Yeah.
You got to make a lot of money. You know, it's a beautiful option, and don't have to force it, but don't tamp it down at the same time to pray for it. And maybe that's, you know, it'd be an honor if my son wanted to be a priest. Now I'm not pushing it. It's got, I consecrate him to the Blessed Virgin Mary, so he's in trouble. That's what I told him from the beginning. So he's in trouble. But like I said, I bought him a mass kit, and he loves playing it and trying to encourage those things, because I've heard stories like that. You know, it's like, well, at a young age, some kids have that thing. But as parents, we shouldn't be like, no, you need to get married and keep my bloodline going, or, you know, those kinds of things, you know, but we need more priests. So,
Amen.
So thank you.
And like, share, and subscribe.
Like, share, subscribe. Thanks for watching.